And back in the day when we were starting in 2015, minimalism was not even a global trend.
What branch were you in?
So I was in energy engineering and
Energy.
yeah.
Typically, what rank people do energy people get into?
In 2018, we were actually featured in LinkedIn India's top 25 startups, and we were placed alongside the biggest unicorns like Razorpay and Oyo. In the middle of COVID, we did some very big transformational work for Tata AIG, which actually won a lot of awards.
What is Vipassana, and what made you go there?
Right. And, somewhere I think we have all been deeply colonized in a way that we increasingly look towards the West for references, for ideals. There would be so many books in science, technology, business, politics, very few in design and marketing.
You're right.
Our vision is that we want to be India's most inventive company in the creative business.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Coffee and Startups podcast. I'm your host Nivedan Rathi, and this is the place where we talk to some of the most amazing leading entrepreneurs and creative minds of the country. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Sahil Vaidya. Welcome Sahil. You're the co-founder of Minimalist. It's one of the fastest growing creative and growth and partners in the country for a lot of upcoming startups and many of the big companies that you know. So I know Sahil back from the days of IIT Bombay when both of us used to hang out there for our music jamming sessions. And back then, that's all we knew of each other, that, he's a drummer, I'm a vocalist, let's jam. And now, after about 8 years of knowing each other, I think there is a lot that has happened in his life. He's co-founded this company, Minimalist, and they've now grown to a very big team of over 160 creative minds, and they're serving some of the biggest brands in the country. In 2019, Sahil was featured in the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia list, and this is not just one of his achievements. There are so many more. There has been listed and he's been acknowledged in so many platforms that I can't simply go on to list out all of them. So with this quick update, about what's been happening, I want to welcome Sahil. So Sahil, thank you so much for coming up, and I'm so excited to talk about all the things that we're going to talk about. You have a lot of exciting things coming up. I know that we were talking about all the things you plan to do. I want to kick off by diving straight into your work first. Right? You've had a very remarkable journey. You started from IIT Bombay, which is supposed to be the nerdiest place on the planet. And then you landed up running one of the biggest and fastest growing creative companies out there. How does that happen? Tell me about the story of you and Minimalist.
Right. So this is a very interesting story because it started in a very unusual way. It wasn't the original setup where, people actually look at a problem, come up with an idea, raise funds and all of that, right? It didn't start like that at all. It started actually when I was studying at IIT, and it was my 4th year, I think. And that's when I met my co-founder, Chirag, and both of us actually met in an auto rickshaw when we were going for our internships. So we had the same location and very little money, so we used to go together in autos. And during the course of those conversations, by talking to each other, we realized that both of us had two things in common. One was that we were both obsessed with creativity. So he was really obsessed with design. He was in fact interning at an advertising firm back in the day. Because he was very clear that he loves design. He loves creating thought-provoking designs, and he wanted to go into that field. I was on the other hand obsessed with humor. I mean, that was one expression of creativity that I was obsessed with. If you remember, I used to write a lot of jokes on Facebook back when Facebook used to work. And
when it was a thing.
When Facebook was a thing. It was actually the biggest thing in our lives in maybe 2013 and 14. And looking at the traction that those stupid things would get, I thought that maybe creativity.
I may have something.
Yeah, maybe. And creativity is probably my jam. And humor was my way of expressing my creativity. Design was his. So that this was one thing that both of us had in common. The other thing that we had in common was that both of us sucked at engineering. We had the worst grade, and I'm sure you would relate to that. So
why do you assume that? Hold on, we need to clarify this here. What branch were you in?
So I was in energy engineering, and
energy.
Yeah.
Typically, what rank people do energy people get into?
I would rather not get into those subjects. But
okay, guys, backstage information. This is something he's feeling a little uncomfortable sharing because I win at this. So the thing is, मैं civil engineering से हूँ. and he's from energy. Both are embarrassing branches.
At IIT Bombay.
At IIT Bombay. So essentially, if you're at IIT Bombay and you're doing civil or energy or MSc Chem
Or metallurgy.
or metallurgy, you're
That's the worst.
metallurgy. We're not even mentioning because they're not in the same league. But okay, anyone who's been through an engineering college knows that there is computer science, there is electrical and electronics, whoever has
mechanical.
that, and then there is mechanical, and then there is basically nobody.
And then the rest of the people.
Yeah, basically rest of the people and nobody.
Yeah.
So we were the rest of the people at IIT Bombay, the extras who got basically they had enough seats to accommodate us.
Just got it. Yeah.
So while he may have accomplished all the fancier things in there, one thing that I win at is I think I have 78 ranks above. I'm above you. So I was 1099 and you were 1177. So that's where we stand. So who's the
smarter one?
No, I didn't mean to say that. That wasn't the intention at all. But I mean, yeah. Okay. So keeping that digression aside, you were shit at engineering.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So those were the two things that we had in common, and then we decided that okay, engineering is definitely not something that we both want to pursue. So what next, right? Because I was in my fourth year, and as you would know, everyone else in IIT is building the best resumes in the world at that time.
Yeah.
Today, in fact, people are already starting up, but back in the day when starting up was not.
Third year was like you're very proactive.
Yes.
Building resume in third year.
So
Yeah.
while everyone else was doing that, I was thinking, what should I really do? And that's when we thought that maybe we could combine our talents to do something very unique. And one thing that was common within the passion for creativity was the fact that when we used to exercise our creativity, the core motivation or the underlying goal would be that how can we provoke thought with whatever we do.
Back as students, you wanted to provoke thought.
I mean, that's
How you thought of it?
Not really. That's an understanding that we gradually develop. I mean,
Got it.
you are, when it comes to self-awareness, when you're in college, you're probably at the rock bottom. That increases over time.
Yeah.
And as that increases, the pre-rationalization begins.
Right,
But we did realize that one of the core motivations was that, in simpler words, people should look at what we have created and say, oh shit, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I get that idea? That's what I mean by thought-provoking. Right?
Makes
Thought-provoking is the fancier word for
Like basically the expression, oh, okay.
that aha moment.
Yeah.
Aha moment and that jealousy that why didn't I get that idea for any
You
creative
live
person?
for it, basically.
Yes. So that used to be the obsession, right?
Right.
I will put out work that people will see and say that shit, I should have come up with that, right? So that's what we started with, and then we realized that minimalism is a great tool to actually create that wow, that aha effect. And back in the day when we were starting in 2015, minimalism was not even a global trend, leave alone India.
Yeah.
So we thought that this is a great opportunity. So why don't we sort of ride?
So you're technically pre-Marie Kondo.
Yes.
She's that minimalist. What's the name of that lady? This work. She basically preaches cleaning up your life and room and everything imaginable.
Yes.
So this is pre-Marie Kondo when you had adopted the notion of minimalism as a way to inspire these aha moments.
Right. I mean, we wouldn't say that we are better than someone or we have done something before someone else, but we were riding that wave.
Yeah.
And before it was a real wave, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we thought that why don't we, I mean, it started with the simplest of ideas. It didn't start with a business or any big plans. It started with the fact that there's so much happening in the country. There are so many social issues, news pieces. Why don't we take them up and come out with our own minimalistic and very witty take on them through the power of minimalist design? And we would post them on Facebook on our own page, and let's see where it goes. So that's literally how that experiment started in our dirty dorm rooms.
So tell me something. As supposedly engineers and IIT engineers, weren't you kind of prompted by people around you all the time कि यार डिजाइन क्या शौक नहीं है, क्या नया शौक पाला है, तब शायद शौक जैसा लगता होगा कि तुम क्या कर रहे हो. It was a weird thing to justify मैं क्यों कर रहा हूँ, क्या कर रहा हूँ.
Right.
What was your take back then कि क्यों कर रहा हूँ मैं?
So the best part is that it didn't start off as a business. So
Right.
you didn't have all of those questions and doubts being broadcasted that, why are you doing this? Isn't it very different? It all started as a content platform, or rather a Facebook page. It went viral. It got first, it got a few thousand likes, then it got 5-10,000 likes, then it went to 1 lakh. And
Wow.
1 lakh back in the day was more like 500K today, right? So that was huge traction. And looking at that traction, a lot of brands started reaching out to us saying that if you're doing this for fun, why don't you really work with us? Why don't you offer us your branding, marketing, or UI
Amazing.
UX solutions? And that's literally how the business was born. So we validated it through a So we did a lot
No
of
intention to do that.
Yeah, with no intention to do that, and we did a lot of things that today have become jargons. I'll give you a few examples. So we in 2014, when news pieces would break out that, let's say, beef got banned in Maharashtra. I mean, you remember this is a long time ago. Or other news pieces that used to go viral. We used to quickly come out with our own minimalistic take on it, and that would start going viral.
Interesting. Yeah.
Today, that is called moment marketing. That's a word that's become an industry.
Yeah, I call that timed content, but I'm going to use this word better. Moment
in the
marketing or moment content.
Yeah, marketing and advertising space, it's called moment marketing. It's a staple for all brands today.
Correct.
But we were doing it when it wasn't even a word, and we didn't even know it's a thing, right? So we were doing that. Then secondly, today people talk about community, power of community, build a community to grow your business.
Right.
We actually started by building a community of those 150K fans, and that actually turned into a business. But we didn't know the science behind it. We weren't doing it in a planned way. It just happened. So I don't take credit for all of that. It just happened. Yeah. But today I realized that, so many things were happening. We just didn't know it.
Amazing. Talk to me about some of the accomplishments at Minimalist that you're proud of. You feel like, I would like to share this.
Right. No, there are, if you ask me in a larger sense, the biggest accomplishment is that we are getting to do something creative, which we really enjoy doing, which we are probably good at, and we can build a business out of it. I think that is the biggest achievement. I don't think any other awards or recognitions match that feel, right? That it only started out as a random creative endeavor. And the fact that we could actually achieve, or rather create a business out of it, which benefits so many people and brands, that itself is.
So, any specific projects or opportunities that stood out for you in your journey, which meant a lot? That you can recollect?
Right. So the one big watershed moment for us was that just 3 years after starting in 2018, we were actually featured in LinkedIn India's top 25 startups, and we were placed alongside the biggest unicorns like Razorpay and Oyo, and we were probably the only bootstrapped company on the list. So that was a proud moment for us.
Wow.
Yeah. And over the years, there's been a lot of pieces of work that we have put out. In fact, in the middle of COVID, we did some very big transformational work for Tata AIG, which actually won a lot of awards. So we were able to bring our brand of minimalism in the world of UI, UX and technology to a legacy brand, just so big. But typically big corporates are very slow to adopt those new age things. So those are the things that really give us a lot of joy.
I mean, Tata or any bank for that matter is the furthest client I would imagine from the brand of minimalism or minimalist. But the fact that they reached out and you served them and you said you won some awards around it.
Right.
That says a lot about the capacity for your creativity. I think that's not a small deal because all of us have styles. Right. And you were in a way able to get out of your core style in a very valuable manner for your clients as well. You're not constantly quirky and humorous, I'm sure.
Correct.
Tata, I can't imagine a very quirky, humorous thing that Tata adopts as a tone for some brand.
Right.
Am I right? They didn't go that way.
So this was more of a user experience transformation for their website, app. We actually didn't manage to bring the entire minimalist philosophy in their entire design journey. We were very lucky because the client was also very entrepreneurial and new age. I mean, they were open to these ideas and they wanted to compete with the Accos and Digits of the world. So we were actually able to do something which such people looked at and said that, wow, this doesn't look like a Tata would do something like this. So that was a big moment for us.
Amazing. No, I think that makes sense. So fair enough. Now that you've had such a rich journey in this process, I want to get a sense of where do you want to head from here? What's your vision?
So we have actually, after doing a lot of discussions and workshops with our leadership, we have crafted a vision statement for us, which also inspires me every day. I mean, every day I wake up so that I can work towards achieving that vision. And our vision is that we want to be India's most inventive company in the creative business.
Inventive, not innovative.
Right.
What's the difference?
So inventive, if you even Google the word, invention, it takes root from the word invention, which is to create new ways of doing things. So even the entire approach of, we get this asked a lot, you are from IIT, why did you even enter the creative field? So even that
waste of taxpayer money.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things. But doing things differently has been our motto since the beginning. And creating a very new way of doing it is also something that we really stand by. So even starting a business from a Facebook page, building a community, and then turning it into a company, that is also a very unusual way of doing things, especially back in the day. Today, of course, we live in
Yeah.
the world of creators, but
Yeah,
back in the day, things were very, very different, as you would know it. Even just now,
Yeah, you were a creator before you knew you were a creator.
before
kind
the
of thing.
word creator
Correct,
existed.
correct. Yeah, earlier it was just basically, I run a Facebook page where I post some designs.
Admin.
Would be the
Admin of the page.
admin of the page. And now we have founder title floating around everywhere.
Exactly.
I sometimes see this and it's just funny because there are sometimes this, I see this founder and I'm like off. And that's kind of not as well explained. And I'm like, I understand you're trying to use the jargon, right?
Right.
So, no, it's very unique that, I mean, at such a young age, you can now look back and say that when things were not trend, I was a part of the early wave or the pre-wave. I think that's a big, remarkable thing in itself. Maybe you didn't plan for it.
Right.
Maybe you fell into it. Whatever happened, but there's a lot of hard work, hustle, and creativity that goes in.
Right.
That you take credit for. Timing is probably you can be humble about.
So, I mean, I don't take credit for all of it because, like I said, timing also is such a big thing. Those opportunities. In fact, the IIT Bombay network opens up so many things for you. So, I mean, a lot of things help you out in your journey. So, it's not like, I mean, I don't like to believe that we did something special or we have some special skills that made all of this happen. It was all of...
Tell me, okay, so let's say you didn't have any special skills, okay. But do you think being from an IIT, having that brand, because this is a question a lot of people ask people from IITs that, you have the brand and which probably they don't have. And they see that difference very visibly. And for us from the inside, it's not as obvious to notice that because we like to believe that the world is meritocratic and these titles don't matter. We would like to believe that, right? But there is some subtle nuanced truth between it. So being from an IIT, did it give you a significant advantage in terms of your credibility as a creative, which has absolutely nothing to do with your degree?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. In terms of validation, it's really good. Especially when now, or probably even few years back, when we go to the biggest brands in the country and the world at large, and when you're talking to CEOs, CMOs, and I mean, at that level, people do want a sense of validation, right? That who are the guys who I'm giving this big mandate to? And when they see IIT, it's an easier decision. Actually, that's what credentials do, right? They just make it easier for the person in front of you to decide whether to work with this person or not. That's the entire role of a credential. Of course, the role of credential is reducing in today's world gradually.
Yeah.
But things change very slowly. So till they change even further, I think till that time IIT has really helped. And not just in terms of these signaling matters, even in terms of the network, the learnings that you can exploit.
I think that's tangible.
Yeah.
The signaling can still be intangible. But yes, I talk about the same thing, that the networks that we have access to, the fact that even if we didn't know each other, if we knew that like we are shared alums of the same community, gives us such a beautiful kickstart of very high trust. And something about this, and this is how I explain to people, that I could literally give out my bank password to a large majority of anyone from IIT. And this can be seen as a very tricky statement to make, and this is a way for me to express that's how much of a trust I feel we start off with. That is a real privilege,
right?
To have a large community of smart people who you also trust immensely. I think that we can't ignore that value that we receive from this brand or this tag.
Absolutely. I think 5 years spending with each other in our most vulnerable states produces a level of trust that's very hard to match. And 5 years is a very long time, 4 or 5 years, whatever. And I think we have seen through each other.
We have a shared story in some ways.
Yes.
We have a shared story in some ways, and it may not be a very dramatically unique a story in terms of the hero's journey, but it is still a story at least we feel a belonging to. We feel like if someone else is from IIT, they probably are somewhat like me. Right. And that matters a lot. That's what belonging means.
Absolutely.
To think that these people in this room are like me, right? And not as much as do they like me, which is the question we constantly struggle with otherwise. We start off with this note that, okay, we're similar, we'll go along. this is a lot of comfort and ease that we are gifted with. So with that aside, okay, so I want to get into the new thing that you've launched. You've launched a book and I've got the copy right here. It's called Think Like the Minimalist. There's a free promotion of this. He's not paying me anything, guys. But I love the concept of this book. I had ordered this book a while ago, and shamelessly, I must admit that I haven't read it yet. But I have full confidence that this will be amazing. I want you to talk about it. I want you to give us a glimpse of what is this book about and why did you write it?
Right.
It's a lot of pain, a lot of work. So it's just for people who are watching this. It says, master the art and science of creating thought-provoking design. And that is something that you guys have almost patented, like your authority on that, when it comes to designing most thought-provoking designs, you have a certain voice and it's widely known to be very unique. And from this, what I understand is you've codified it.
Right.
So I wanted to talk about what's that code, what's the story behind the book. So go ahead, please.
Right. So, what we have observed is whenever people see these pieces of work that we used to do, and many of them would go viral, people would think that it was a piece of magic, and people would think that it somehow descended from the heavens, and it can only be done by a few gifted.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
Yeah,
and it can only be done by some geniuses. But what happened was that in this journey, even for us initially, when we just started that Facebook page, it was a struggle to constantly come up with things that would blow everyone's minds,
right,
including our own. But over time, as we got better at it, and when the company started in 2015, and when we broadened our horizons beyond just social media or regular design to wider fields like brand communication, brand strategy, UI, UX, we realized that you actually need a process to be able to replicate that success over and over again for brands.
right.
And we started training people. We realized that there is some process to it. There is some method to it that we also use unconsciously while coming up with those ideas. And then we observed that a lot of the people in our company actually started replicating these things. So in fact, we trained them. We started making some processes out of it. And those people actually started going to colleges and taking workshops, and people in those workshops started replicating the output.
Wow.
So somewhere we realized that this is something that you could train people at.
For creative people, by default, to say that you can make a process out of creativity is almost blasphemous. Like people can get rioty around this idea that how dare you call a process a way to create creative stuff.
Right. So this is more of a higher level process that we have tried to define in this book, that what is the approach that you actually adopt when you try to come up with something in the lines of minimalist ideas. But this is not just for minimalism. This is, like we have said, it's for thought-provoking design, which is the need of the hour for most brands, most product companies today. And apart from the higher level technique, we have actually come up with a lot of specific approaches or weapons in the toolkit that people can use in various cases. So there are design techniques, there are humor techniques, writing techniques that we have done. In fact, like you said, people find it blasphemous. So what we have done is at the end of every chapter, which every chapter covers a technique, at the end of every chapter, we have a problem statement for the reader, which they can sort of go through the technique in the chapter, read the examples, and then start applying them on their own. And what we have seen is that since the 3-4 months that we have launched this book, a lot of people have started actually attempting them and putting their output on social media. And
tagging minimalist.
Yes. And
free virality. Have you prompted them to do this?
The book actually contains questions, right, at the end of every chapter.
Okay.
So people have naturally started coming up with their own ideas, and somehow it's working. In the sense, of course, to develop a level of finesse that will catapult you into the global standards of creativity will take a lot of time, a lot of effort. This is not a magic bullet or something like that, but it will get you started, and you will start seeing that, oh, all of those pieces of work that I used to think were magical, I can now see through them. I can see how the designer or the creator must have thought about them.
Wow.
In fact, you can even watch stand-up videos and you can dissect every joke that a comedian is making. This is the technique. This is how the insight came. This is the technique. This is the final output.
Wow. And basically, if I'm an unfunny person, if I go through that technique, let's say in the case of stand-up comedy, you think I can genuinely become a great comic?
You can. Your ability to come up with insights will still be required, which is what actually comedians are good at, coming up with insights. They observe reality very acutely.
And
then
there's
they
no
pack it-
hardcore process for that so easily. Like that's your observation, that's your core input. In some
Yeah,
ways
I mean, this is
to
not a book
process.
on how do you observe better. In the world of design, we have actually given some recommendations on how do you observe better. But specifically on that tangent, on what comedians do, they observe
Interesting.
life as it is. We haven't written about that, but I was just giving an example. I mean, you still
Wow.
have to come up with those insights and observe people, and then apply a layer of any of the humor techniques.
So when you say design, right, you're saying that you will, if I read this book and I go through some of the things that you guys have learned and codified for yourself, if I go through that process, what does that mean? What will I become better at? Will I become a better graphic designer? Will I become a better copywriter? Will I become a better, I don't know, orator for that matter, and more influential at it? What does it specifically help me achieve?
Right. So definitely the first two. If you are a writer or a designer,
Okay.
for sure it's going to help you. Even as a marketeer or a brand
Okay.
manager or even as a design manager, so many startups have product management roles, right? So
Correct.
this is a very apt read for people who are driving product design or probably leading the entire marketing or brand management for their companies and even for management. So I know CEOs who are reading this book because it gives them a very different perspective from
Interesting.
whatever they have been doing.
And since I think you're the right person to ask this question, design is something, the word design is one of the most misunderstood words. Typically, when I talk to people who are not from a design background or a product management background or a related field, what they get in design is someone sitting on Photoshop and making something. Design. So I want you to help us understand, what does design really mean and how is it different from what people usually imagine it to be?
Right. I think you already spoke about what they imagine it to be, but what it really is, I mean, don't quote me on this because it's not a dictionary definition, but
Yeah.
for me, design is a way of problem solving. It's a way of getting from point A to point B in the most optimum way possible by addressing the needs of various people involved in that journey.
So you're defining it more in terms of problem solving.
Yes.
And what role does the look and feel of a solution play in this notion of design?
So that's the ultimate execution or the application of the solution that you have come up with. So in a, let's say, a product parlance, if I talk about it, so there is user experience and there's user interface.
Right.
For example, if you use apps that you use every day, like Uber, Ola, Swiggy, whatever, the user experience is the way it works. How easy is it for users to use
Right.
it, navigate, get their problems solved?
Right.
How well you structure the journeys for them to achieve various goals, or probably even induce goals that they didn't even have. That's the
That's the next level shit.
that's what's happening today more and more.
Yeah.
But user interface is how it looks, how it feels, how those illustrations are, how those pop-ups
Got
happen, what's the experience visually.
And are these the core of the design that we talk about, or are these the culmination points of a great design?
I mean, both of them have to tango to create a really
Okay.
good design. So the thought as well as the execution, the navigation as well as the way it works as well as the way it looks, both have to be in sync. Of course, there are examples of products that don't look good at all, but just work. Reddit is an example. It's not designed to
I think
look
Amazon could be that too. Doesn't look good for sure, but great experience.
Yes. So there are many examples of things that don't
it.
look good but just work fine. Tally is also an example.
Yeah.
It works for different reasons, but it works.
Yeah, it's got its own history behind it of why it's so deeply etched
Entrenched.
into. Yeah. But cool. I think it's good to learn about the fact that someone's trying to make design a more widely understood and figured out thing than a momentary insight imagination that we have for creative people. Yes, you can have momentary creativity, yes, and you can probably be very creative in that moment suddenly and be absolutely lame the rest of the time. But if you want to have some degree of consistency, you will need a set of frameworks. With time you can come up with them yourself, like the way you did, but there are ways you can accelerate that process.
Right.
So this is an unpaid sales pitch again. I'm going to close this section.
So there are a couple of things I want to add.
Please.
In terms of why. So one was, of course, if you see in India, very few books are written in the space of design and marketing.
That's actually very unique. I
fact,
don't
in
know
the
a
world-
single in a single Indian figure I don't have in mind when it comes to the word design.
Exactly, because there are very few. I mean, there are very few books written, even globally. there would be so many books in science, technology, business, politics, very few in design and marketing.
You're right.
So that was also one reason why we thought that, we should write this. There's so much knowledge that we have captured in our journey. Why don't we sort of share it? Of course, I consume books so much, I read so much, so it felt natural that if I have even one piece of knowledge that I can share with others, it makes sense to just put it out there. And most importantly, I think the standards of design and marketing in India can really grow. And there's a big crowd of youth that is now looking at design and marketing as a viable career alternative, which wasn't the case when we were probably in school. So
people are realizing more and more, I think design is a very fulfilling career. It was earlier looked as a career you struggled at. Now it's reversed. People think they flourish when they're doing
It's the hot new
design.
thing.
It's actually the hot new thing.
And people need tools that can leapfrog them to the next level, which is why we thought, why don't we do our bit there?
So let's make it a mandatory textbook in all design schools very soon. Any people from design schools who want to contest this idea, feel free to give me a few comments and likes or dislikes. But okay, so you just mentioned one very important thing. I want to move on from this to other books. You are an avid reader, right? And you've read, I don't know, tons and tons of books, probably a few hundred by now, right? With that we were chatting before this. And I am genuinely impressed by the idea that you consume a lot of high quality content in the form of some of these really remarkable books, right? Some of the names that we took. So I want to get a sense of, you're running a company on one end, right? And I'm sure you have your calendar blogged for most of it, right? But you're still finding the time to read these books. And you've recently launched your newsletter, right? So you're blogging, you're making this newsletter, which I have read multiple times, and I think it's very deeply insightful. And that's actually, for people who are watching this, that was the trigger where Sahil and I connected again after a few months. And I said, these are amazing topics, we have to talk about them. Right? These are topics that I used to be obsessed about, trying to make sense of the world and make sense of what my inner world too. And then I saw that you were sharing your deep insights with the world. And I said, you know what, let's talk about this.
Right.
That's how this idea for this podcast, got into the head. And you said, let's do it. We were trying to plan for a 3-hour jam. And this is the first time we're setting up a fancy setup in our friend's place. Hi, Sarika. She's sitting here getting bored. But this, I want to specifically touch on this part where how is it possible that you're making so much time for reading? It must be something really meaningful to you.
Yeah, I think.
Why?
So by nature, I've realized that I'm very curious, and in some ways, maybe that curiosity has gone into overdrive, which is why. So it all started maybe when I got back into reading. So I'm very fortunate. My parents, my father specifically, he got me into reading when I was a kid. So I used to read a lot of mysteries and all of that. And when I was in school, I used to read Agatha Christie novels all the time, and even some thrillers. So I got into reading because of parents. But somehow, when I went into IIT, all of that just disappeared because we were having so much fun, music and whatnot. Somehow it was the most undisciplined phase of my life. And I think all reading was thrown out of the window.
Right.
Very fortunately, after I started the company, 1 year after that, in 2016, I got back into the game. And I started reading. And after that, I think it has probably been a positive feedback loop where, reading some things, they blew my mind. I thought that I should read more. And that further blew my mind. And it's, like a positive feedback loop. Every mind blow just increases your thirst and your curiosity. So and then that triggered an endless...
A truly curious mind would not be satiated if they consumed a lot.
Yes.
They would further be thirsty for more.
Absolutely.
That's a sign of a truly curious mind, right?
Yes.
And I think that puts me at a disadvantage now, because if we were just talking about this, that I feel like I've now stopped consuming a lot, and I want to make sure that I'm creating way more than consuming. That's as a principle right now. But let's talk about some of the books that you've been reading. Tell me your 2 favorite books that you kind of have enjoyed most.
Right. So just like you said, reading is never, whatever you read, it's never enough. Even favorites, 2, 5, 10. That's
Recent favorites. Let's make it simple. Recent favorites.
Yeah. So, I'll probably not talk about recent also. I'll probably just give you a random set. But yeah, if you would ask about recent, there's this book called Behave on our worst and best.
Sapolsky?
Yeah, Sapolsky.
Okay, wow.
So it's a big book, but it's on our best and worst behaviors. That was fantastic.
The neuroscience science of our best and worst behavior.
Yeah, the biology of our
Best and worst selves.
Same thing. But
Yeah.
I think that was very fascinating to look
Yeah.
at what really fuels our behaviors of, let's say,
Right.
hatred or altruism, or us versus them dynamics. So that was fantastic. I also, in fact, I'm currently reading this book called The Anarchy. It's on the entire history of how East India Company came to India, and
Okay.
like a small company of few people actually built such a crack army and took over an entire nation, what was the richest nation in the world barely 300 years ago, how they subjugated that entire nation. So
Wow.
so I mean, this I've been very curious about history increasingly, but how is it that if India was so good at so many
Right.
things, and it
This is a
literally
question I've always had. Am I going to get this answer here?
I mean, I would much rather point you to the books than
No, not from you, but I'm saying, will it give me a satisfactory answer to how this really happened? We were
Absolutely.
supposed to be not so easily enslaved by a few weak men.
Yes, absolutely. You will get a lot of the answers, but like, I don't know if I said this, but history is a very deep subject.
Okay.
You have to read so many nuanced accounts. I mean, I'm reading this one book. It covers the period from 1600, when the Brits first arrived, to probably 1800, by the time their power was, I mean, they were firmly in control of India.
Wow.
The real conquest began after that, actually. But the seeds of the conquest were sown in those 200
Right.
years. And I mean, even in that, there's so many perspectives. India is a huge nation. I mean, there's so many different areas, right?
Unimaginable to control a big country like India.
Right. And still it happened. It happened for a wide variety of reasons. And so just trying to understand these things, drives me. Like, what is it that really happened? In fact, I also before that read about the history of medieval India, which is a subject that we barely know about.
Yeah.
In
I
our
have no clue.
Yeah, I mean, neither did I. So at least that one book helped me understand much deeply, what was really happening in the country, what kind of dynasties were there. In fact, you would probably not know that people say that Indians have never conquered anyone else, but that's not technically true. There was this Chola dynasty which actually sent ships and conquered most of Southeast Asia. So they were the first, probably, blue ocean navy that an Indian empire had, and they had a huge navy, and they actually conquered most of
Wow.
Southeast Asia, which is why there's such an Indian culture over there.
I've been to Bali, and you have all Mahabharata and Ramayana stories happening constantly every corner. You've got Arjuna Murti like this shooting arrow and stuff, and everyone has a dream of one time visiting India, because it's the holy place where our gods took birth. I'm like, what? I'm sitting in Bali? Why are you guys saying all of this?
So in fact, in Bali, once negotiations were happening over the taking God's names. They were, you Hindu, me Hindu, and they were trying to mark down the price. I was trying to reduce the price. They were increasing the price. So
You're like, yeah, Bhagwan ke naam
Yeah,
pe,
yeah,
ya Ram
exactly.
ke naam pe, nahi Krishna ke naam pe.
literally said, your God same, my God same. So,
Oh, God.
but yeah, you get the feel that
No, I think I'm all up for religion and gods if they help me get better prices.
so that's really the trick. But there are so many things that have happened in the country that we don't even know about, and somewhere I think we have all been deeply colonized in a way that we increasingly look towards the West for references, for ideals. In fact, we are talking in English right now. It's not even our first language, ideally. It's become our mode of communication. That's fine. But so many aspects about our culture are slowly being forgotten or sidelined.
So let's get into this part. Okay, you said something. We have been deeply colonized. Explain that.
So I feel that so many things that we do, we typically look towards the West for references or validation. Even, when, for example, even when reading a book, you try to look at a Western author, okay, there's some mark of credence over here. Versus, I mean, we would not typically turn to Indian authors. This is just one example.
Okay, I get
For the
that.
best standards in anything, we turn to the West first, rather than looking
Is
at
that baseless, you think?
not baseless, but that's become the standard. At the cost of it, we say that none of our sources make any sense, or we would probably not look at Indian things. Whereas if you look at literature or medicine or history or culture, so many of our own ideas were so well ahead of time. We have had such a deep, rich past. So many brilliant things have come out of the country, but somehow those are ignored. Right? I mean, we are fascinated by maybe Italian architecture or French luxury or stuff like that, which is good. No problem in that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have forgotten, or rather put a blind eye to everything glorious and amazing about our own past. So somehow I feel that correction needs to happen. And personally, I am also trying to sort of get myself educated more and more about what's happened in our country.
And how, like, you've been reading history as one of your very interesting topics that you're pursuing. Sometimes people question this, and this is a question we've always had as a child. पहले क्या हुआ है जान के क्या उखाड़ लूंगा मैं. एक ये I used to be that kid. And then I got interested in history myself. I haven't read this history bit a lot. I've only explored more recent history.
Right.
But I would love to get into until medieval at the very least.
Right.
Probably after this talk's inspiration. But what utility do you think has this history served to you? Like, to know, to pursue it with curiosity, you get to know a lot of facts.
Right.
You get to know what is it that you get to know that is helping you, and in what ways?
Right. I think there are tons and tons of benefits of reading.
And especially as a role of co-founder of Minimalist, let's also bring in that angle.
Right. I mean, if you actually read about what things have happened in the past, you can actually be much better prepared for the new novel circumstances that you will encounter in life. For example, a very small example, not very tangible also, but when COVID-19 happened, most of us felt that it was the biggest shock of our lives.
Right.
We had never seen anything like this. This is probably the first time the world is experiencing anything like this.
Yeah, that was a narrative.
Honestly,
Never before ever.
Yeah, but honestly, pandemics have been the most common feature of our history.
I only remember Spanish flu, the 100 years ago that happened.
Exactly, but
has it been very widespread?
Yeah, I mean, ever since
Humans have been sick forever.
humans have been sick, and the moment humans domesticated plants and animals,
Right.
and viruses started going from animals into our bodies, and our immune systems didn't have defenses against them, pandemics have been a feature of human civilizations. So, I mean, there have been the Antonine plagues and whatnot. India has had so many of those plagues. They have caused so much devastation and despair. So there was this book that I was reading when COVID started called Plagues and Peoples, and I realized that, oh man, pandemics have been so common. People have turned to religion and whatnot when pandemics have literally torn apart the
Must have
fabric.
been kind of seen as wrath of God. Kind of a phenomenon back then.
Exactly.
We had no better explanation.
No better explanation. In fact, quarantine. We tend to think that all of these concepts are modern, that we are very smart. Quarantine was actually started in 1300s. So it was started when the Black Death. So Black Death was one of the major plagues that happened. By the way, all of this is not. I'm not like an authority on history, but these are all part of my readings. Yeah. But Black Death started in the 14th century, and I think somewhere in Croatia they had started the process of quarantining people who were coming from ships because they didn't want the plague to spread and destroy their entire populations. So there are so many of these things. For example, even civil services examinations. We think UPSC, IAS, all of this is very recent. 100-200 saal purana hoga. In China, it's been happening since the BCs.
Come on.
Yeah. They have had the
BCs.
Yes. So they have had the oldest recruitment system for bureaucrats. God. And so you have to really understand where our ideas come from. How did they emerge in the first place?
Got it. So essentially, if you understand where these ideas come from, does that in your field of work help you be more original because you understand origins better? Can I make that parallel?
I'm sure. See, I don't really read history to have very tangible benefits. I
Fair
think
enough.
Fair
enough. Yeah. As a side effect, maybe.
Yeah, side effect. Maybe it makes you much more open-minded. Probably it shows you connections that you didn't know existed.
Interesting.
In fact, one super interesting fact that I recently learned was that, I mean, this seems to be true. I've tried to verify it, but the word sambar. Sambar is such a favorite dish for all of us from Tamil Nadu, right? But what's the origin of sambar? It actually came from Sambhaji, who was the Maratha king, whose empire extended till Tanjore, and he was missing his dal. So they added local ingredients, tamarind and all, and that became sambar after Sambhaji.
Wow.
And now it's our favorite dish, globally also.
Yeah, I am a big fan. I had one yesterday. I had this yesterday night. Very freshly. I can feel it in my mouth still.
So who would have known that, there was such a rich history of Marathas in Tanjore. I mean, there's so much that has happened in the world that we don't even know. And in fact, we tend to think that most of our progress has just happened right now. That 21st century science and progress is
the acceleration is phenomenal. Well, we have to give that.
It is. I'm not belittling that, but I'm saying that so many of our
progress is not new.
Yeah,
it's accelerated because of technology, but we've had a constant history of progress and a lot of changes, evolutions that we probably don't seem to talk about. We're talking about Instagram. Look where Instagram is now. I think that's the time scale we operate in.
Right.
And right now when we were talking about Facebook, He said, back in those days,
Right.
as if God knows what, we've been on this planet for 70 years.
So I heard someone, probably some founder, some tech founder only
Right.
in India, say that to understand any subject deeply, you have to understand its history and the first principles that drove
it?
it.
Interesting.
Yeah, probably it was the founder of Meesho only who made that quote. So
It could be Kunal Shah.
no, I think it was
With it? Interesting.
But and I said, I felt that I completely agree. If you don't know how that field has even emerged, you will probably make the same mistakes that the people who originated that idea
Interesting.
would make. I'll give you a very tangible example also.
Yeah.
So I was reading this book, Changing World Order by Ray Dalio.
Yeah.
And so that book examines what happens when countries go to war in terms of your financial health, right? So this is very tangible, right?
Your means personal
Yeah.
finance.
What
Oh.
will happen to my money if India goes to war?
Interesting.
Or-
I need that answer, guys. This is very important. What will happen to your money if we tomorrow fight with Pakistan and China and Russia? Russia, no, Russia not. Russia is a friend.
I don't know. And neither do I know the answer to that question.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But what he has done is he has looked at what happens when these countries go to wars and how you should prepare for them financially, right? So in that book, I'll not go into the entire build-up of
Yeah.
facts, but essentially
Give me real content.
Yeah, what he showed was that in Germany and Japan, which were probably the most leading powers in the world, powers that would probably be the biggest in some time, right? This is pre-war outcome, right? Before the wars,
Yeah.
the outcome of the wars got decided. People in the stock markets, 10 years on, they had lost all of their wealth. And why? Because when wars start, typically governments do capital controls. So you are not able to redeem your stocks. Or maybe today, maybe your net banking will be blocked and you won't be able to take your money out.
Interesting.
Because the government needs all of that money for war or whatever, right? So capital controls have been a very common feature in the history of warfare.
Okay.
And so how do you really prepare for such situations, right?
Stack all the cash in my bed, right?
Yeah. Not really.
Guys, buy gold from illegal markets. But no financial advice here.
No financial advice, but you need some assets that you can actually run away with, which is what literally happened in
sure.
Ukraine right now.
And even partition for that matter.
It could be war, it could be earthquake, it could be anything where
Wow.
the typical digital rails or financial rails of your economy stop working, which is literally what happened in Russia and Ukraine right now. And what are they doing? They're turning
Wow.
to Bitcoin. Even grandma is using Bitcoin in Ukraine.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. Will you call, just curious, because we have a family business of real estate. Will you call land as that asset? Because you technically can't run away with that land. And the ownership probably is going to get dissolved if your country goes to, the dogs.
Right.
So land wouldn't be valid anymore. So you could be more tangible things like gold and everything. Let's
Right.
say in a more tangible way.
Right. So I'll tell you, the way I started thinking about this was last year when I read this book called Why Nations Fail. And in that book, so I never thought about all of these issues, okay? I recently
You're
started.
talking about, I can show you my Amazon wishlist and like these names are there and I'm feeling so guilty. I haven't picked them up yet.
You should. So in that book, he has spoken about, I mean, this is not the main theme, but he has spoken about how in Argentina, inflation has always been 70%, 90%. The currency has collapsed probably twice or thrice. I don't know the exact number. But there are so many times when common people's wealth has totally been destroyed overnight.
out.
You imagine, you have worked your ass off for 10 years.
That's not okay.
And then after that, overnight, your wealth is gone because of inflation. The government has inflated away your money. What will you do? You have no option. So that's when I started thinking of hard assets. And gold is a hard asset.
Inflation-proof assets.
Not inflation proof, but at least, so there are a lot of angles to this. So then what I thought was, okay, earlier I used to think that real estate is a bad idea from an investment perspective. But then I felt that, okay, if there is confiscation happening or if there are these stock controls that happen, at least having your wealth stored in the form of real estate is at least something. Your digital accounts can be blocked or taken away, but at least that piece of real estate.
And now I see why people who are gung-ho about Bitcoin are so gung-ho. Like they are all in it, where Bitcoin is the shit, is the belief that the entire crypto community evangelists have. And now that you mentioned that this has been a feature of history, and I've asked this question to so many people in the crypto world that, it's all cool. Yes, it's highly secure. But why do I need it? I've asked this question multiple times and I've never honestly gotten a very satisfactory answer. It's probably because people haven't brought out this point
Yes.
that, hey, why don't you look at the history? And even though I didn't ask you this question today, that wasn't the intent. I actually got the answer after multiple years.
Yes.
I would say that this is why we need assets which nobody can control.
Exactly.
And that's where the value of decentralized. Wow, I'm just absorbing this right now.
So I'll tell you the concept of sovereign assets. So when I was saying that you need some sovereign assets, you need assets that you totally own and control, and no one can deplatform you or take them away from you overnight. So cash, while you hold them and there is
Still
privacy,
backed by government.
Still backed by government. Tomorrow notebandi can happen and your notes can go to waste. Real estate, yes, it's a hard asset, but like if you have to run away, you can't run away, and in earthquakes your house might crumble. Gold is way superior in my view in these use cases. You can run away with gold, but gold also has its limitations. Imagine running away with a brick of gold. It's so valuable and it's very easy to confiscate at borders. People get frisked and your gold will get taken away.
Wow.
This is why I really like Bitcoin, because it's digital gold. You can just run away with Bitcoin.
Finally, I know what is digital gold. It was a buzzword by now.
Yeah, so you can transport it over distance without really having to carry it on your person, even though hardware wallets are here and people are carrying it on their person if they require it. And nobody can deplatform you, nobody can censor you, nobody can reverse any transaction. That's the beauty of it. So tomorrow you can't be you can't be told that you are a infidel or you are an anti-national and we are deplatforming you and these assets are no longer yours.
That doesn't happen in this country.
You never know. Anything can happen anywhere. So
yeah. This country has zero anti-nationals.
So that is the big use case of Bitcoin in my view. And in one word, in one sentence, the main use case, like you said, why do I need it? It's a hedge against systemic collapse.
Ooh. Wow. This sounds like a tweet. Have you tweeted this before?
It's not mine, so I didn't.
Okay.
Most of what I'm saying is not my own original content.
Fair enough. No, the ability to process that content and make it valuable to someone else, that's yours.
I guess so.
So, okay. No, I think I'm so glad that finally, without even asking this question, I got the answer. That to me is my biggest takeaway so far, that, to hedge against systemic collapse is the core value of something like Bitcoin. I think if more people got this, like me, like just I would think differently about this entire new change that the crypto world is bringing in, and then I would have more clarity in terms of what of this is something for me to kind of give my faith into, right? So fair enough. Okay, I think
And by the way, it might still go to shit. So we are not saying that it's the best asset out there and it'll 10x or anything like that. But it
won't go to shit because of this reason at the very least.
Yeah.
Not because of systemic collapse.
Yeah. In fact, it will protect you in that case. So it's seen more as an insurance.
Right. It's like it's like the pros and cons exercise.
It's like insurance for your portfolio, and that insurance scheme also might collapse. So you never know. But
no,
it's a good bet.
It's a good bet. And that clearly we're not advocating that you should invest a lot in Bitcoin. This is, as you said, hedge. You look at it as insurance against, you've got insurance against some sickness, let's say.
Exactly.
Look at it as insurance against systemic collapse. Such a different mindset.
Yes.
And now actually I'm thinking, in my mind, my calculations are going on in terms of, okay, in my next set of investments that I'm going to make, mutual fund mein lagana hai, isme lagana hai, I'm going to now think of hedging against systemic collapse as a very important element in my
Exactly. And if you think from that framework now, you don't check your insurance policies every day to see what's the valuation today.
Oh God.
What's the insurance news in the market right now?
This is the best crypto or other Bitcoin and blockchain masterclass that one can ever deliver.
I am not an expert at all.
Not an expert.
I am trying to learn and understand. I don't know anything.
But I think this is plain and simple reasoning. It's not about anyone's authority. You didn't say because you're saying so. This is not your original idea, of course. But the fact that you put it beautifully in this context of when is something valuable and when is it not, I think that's valuable.
Right.
So I think that's a takeaway that I would go back home with. And I would like to know other people's opinions on when they think of Bitcoin, did they have this clarity or not, right? So this is actually a genuine call out to people who have studied Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, as in where do they think have their understandings been? I would like to know because mine wasn't definitely as clear. I used to believe that मुझे पता है लेकिन कुछ तो यहाँ पे स्कैम चल रहा है ऐसी एक फीलिंग हमेशा आती थी एक श्योरिटी नहीं थी which I've gotten a confidence on exactly what it does. Right. So I would actually love to hear some call outs on this. We spoke about Vipassana. I've done Vipassana once, the full course and a couple of short courses. And I was so happy to know that you've done Vipassana and you're actually like you're committed to this practice of Vipassana, right? So let's talk about that. And it's something that I have personally tried understanding a lot, which is so counter the philosophy of Vipassana because technically there is no philosophy in terms of it's all experiential learning. That's something I wrap my head around. But let's simplify it. What is Vipassana and what made you go there?
I think the word itself means observing reality as it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
V and Pashya.
Yeah.
So Pashya means dekhna and V is like as it is, kuch something
like
meaning,
that. Yeah. I mean, I have not got very deep into the Pali roots, but yeah, that is what it is. It's a Pali language word, which was the language used in the day of the Buddha. And if you want an analogy of what that 10-day course does, it's a deep surgical operation of the mind.
Okay, explain that.
And this is again their words. These are not my words. But it's true. So what happens is in those 10 days actually, and like you clearly said, it's not high philosophy, right? It's a very simple idea that you experience and understand within the framework of your own mind and body. And once you start developing understanding of that and you learn that technique, it sort of really changes you. So if I have to make it much more tangible, see, and this is the way I tell people about it who are interested and want to sort of go for one course, that you read about the best things in the world, about what to do, how to behave, how to live the right life, morality, right? You read Gita, you may read Quran, you may read Bible, you may read so much philosophy that is there in the world. But when it comes to implementing those ideas, how successful are we? We aren't, right?
Embarrassingly poor.
We fail miserably, right? Yeah. I mean, worse than I used to at IIT. So, so that gap. So for the lack of a better jargon, I would say the intellect implementation gap is huge. The gap between intellectualizing something and then really implementing it in your life. So these philosophies give you with great ideas, imbue great ideas within you, but you are not able to apply them. Yeah. I mean, this karm karo, but phal ki chinta mat karo. We all love that quote.
I am like, sun liya, थोड़ा समझ भी आ गया, पर चल क्या रहा है ये? मतलब what exactly am I supposed to do with it?
How should I apply it?
Sounds good, sounds wise.
Exactly.
Sounds like something I would share as a WhatsApp message, forward it multiple times.
Exactly. But how do I apply it? What do I do with it?
So what have you learned about from Vipassana that you think it has the power to bridge that gap?
Right.
Because I think you're leading towards it.
Yes. So the problem is that all of these great quotes and aphorisms, they are words.
Yeah.
And words don't penetrate our brains. Okay. They do, but not when you want transformative change. I mean, ideas, concepts, things that you want to learn in school, college, those words penetrate.
Words don't penetrate us enough for transformative change.
Yes.
Then what does?
A technique. And that's what Vipassana does.
Okay.
So if you want an analogy, your brain is like a computer and it understands a certain language of code, and words are not, the syntax is not compatible with that code. You need a different code.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You're basically trying to write Python code in a C++ compiler.
Exactly.
And like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, so those brilliant philosophical codes are Python and your compiler is C++. You need a technique. Right. You need a form of technology that is compatible. And which is why it begins with the breath, which is the most natural thing in the body. It's always happening. In breath, out breath. So it's
at the midpoint of voluntary and involuntary.
Yes.
Both things.
So it begins within the framework of your body, and it begins with certain techniques that you can apply and actually begin a process of deep transformative change within your body and mind. That is the deep value of Vipassana.
Okay, let's break this down further. I know that the idea is not to philosophize or intellectualize Vipassana.
Right.
It's an attempt to understand what we understand. Like, it's a share. Like, I have had my own experience, and to me, it was revelatory in some ways, and probably that's a different revelation for you, right? You said that one is that the language of our brain and body, let's put it as one single unit, is very different from the language that we speak or understand at an intellectual level. So there needs to be a translator between these two, and that is the technique Vipassana, right?
Yes.
I'm getting you right.
Yes.
Now, what about something like so just I think a quick refresher on Vipassana for people who are watching. I just realized that Vipassana is this big, it's a technique which is now being taught in these centers, thousands of centers across the world in many like Indian and global cities, where there is a 10-day course where people go in with a complete intention to be within their own selves, like they kind of contain yourself.
Noble silence.
It's called a noble silence. That's the term for it. And the idea is that you want to train your awareness. That's how I felt of it at a layer.
It's like training your mind.
It's a training ground for your mind. Yes, actually that's much better. So I think it's better. I'm struggling with the exact way to explain it. So Sahil, why don't you explain what is Vipassana and what do you do there? Let's start with that again.
So essentially, it's a way to sort of train yourself to observe reality as it is within the framework of your mind and body. So essentially, the meditative techniques over there begin with, initially for the first 3 days, just observing your breath, which is called Anapana meditation. And then they teach you Vipassana, which I won't go into right now. But it's about observing sensations of the body and remaining equanimous with them. And at its core, it's actually trying to understand the 3 big truths that the Buddha actually came up with. One of which is to understand the impermanence of things. So the core insight, to break it all down, and if you really want to understand why I should go, it's the fact that as humans, as biological animals, we are designed to either crave something or hate something. Either we have cravings that I want this, I want this.
We have aversion.
Or aversion. I don't want this, I don't want this. Right? And ignorance is the third root cause of this phenomenon, is what sows the seeds of our suffering. So life is suffering, and that suffering happens because of these.
It's a consequence of ignorance,
cravings, aversions, and ignorance.
Got it.
So, these are philosophical ideas, but the best part is when you go there, you actually observe it within your body and mind. And it's a lifelong journey. Of course, it won't happen in one go, but as you grow your understanding of the universal truth of suffering, of impermanence, you start understanding that, maybe if I practice this technique, it'll help me become a much better person, much more equanimous person. Equanimity means observing reality as it is without reacting. So the habit pattern of our minds, which you sort of realize over there, is to constantly react, right? Something unfavorable happens, we are like, no, I don't want this. Oh, this is so bad. Why did this happen? Why me? This is a question that we always get. If something good happens, you want more of it, more. That's the reason we eat way too much. We drink way too much. We're not able to stop ourselves. And that's not because we are bad or evil. That's the way the human mind has evolved. That's how animals have evolved. So this actually addresses a very core part of human nature, human biology, and gives you a way to come out of that cycle of constant suffering.
Wow.
So it breaks the barrier between the conscious and unconscious and gives you a technique to begin true radical change. That's why I like this. And for your viewers also, there are so many courses, there are so many people coming up with various courses, right? Retreats.
There are apps as well.
There are apps, but I'll not touch the apps for now. Apps can be actually very useful to get a meditation practice started.
Correct.
But there are so many gurus and babas and so many courses that happen, right? And typically for anyone who's well educated and probably scientific in some way, they tend to think that, I want to stay away from this spiritual mumbo jumbo, or I don't want to get into this. It seems like
for them it's the perfect place.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's a lot of resistance to such things. Sometimes we conflate it with religion, and there's a tendency for us to say, oh no, I'm not religious at all, right? So the thing is so even my bullshit detector was very high when it came to all of these things. I don't want to fall for a cult or some mumbo jumbo or some mindless stuff. So I am just wanting to say that this is none of that. This is not religious. This is not mumbo jumbo. The biggest validation is it's free. You don't have to pay anything. It's not a commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
And
despite that, it's one of the biggest ones out there.
Yeah. And there are numerous people, some of the smartest minds in the world who have trained in
One
this.
of them, like I remember, I was particularly inspired by the writer of *Sapiens*, Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah.
He spends I remember he was telling this in one of his interviews, that every December he's in India, or every alternate December, he's in 30-day course in India. And he's been to Jaipur once also. So I felt like, wow, so cool. Hamare center mein ko aaya, itna acha hota. But
Right.
he said that he was, when Trump got elected, that was somewhere in December. So he had no clue that this has happened. As an author who comments on the state of affairs of the world and its history and its future, he had no idea, because he was at Vipassana, he was completely cut off from the world, and he only got this news a week or two later that this has happened. This is like one of the brightest minds, who is like one of the professors who's shared their insights in the form of these books, beautiful books, *Sapiens* and *The History of Tomorrow*, if I'm not wrong.
Homo Deus. Yeah.
Homo Deus. So this person, I was actually quite inspired, because he credits his abilities as an author. He credits his ability to think so clearly and draw connections without distractions
Yeah.
to Vipassana a lot.
Yeah.
That made a lot of difference to me in how I perceived the technique before. And it's not just another meditation. People say there are so many types of meditation. Yes, there are. There is something unique about this.
Yes.
And to me, one of the biggest revelations that I had was when I went into that space and I was observing my sensations, my tendency to react to everything. A simple tendency to react could be, I had a sensation here, I wanted to itch a little bit, so I was doing this, then this. I might touch my nose a little bit, right? I'm maybe shaking my leg a little bit, right? These are all small observations that can be seen in the physical body, but there are much deeper layers of these reactions going on inside, right?
Yes.
Right now, if you're having a good conversation, we are enjoying that, or getting the satisfaction of the craving to have to share some learnings, insights, maybe some intellectual stuff, that we are getting a dopamine kick from it.
By the way, when someone praises you or you are having a good time, there are pleasant sensations all over your body.
Yeah,
And
true.
actually, you are addicted to those sensations. You're not addicted to the praise.
Yes, this is don't go back with all the secrets.
Yeah, I mean, but you will be able to observe things. That way.
Interestingly, it will break the brain body and mind body
Barriers.
separation that we imagine there is. It will break away that notion, and I think it highlighted very uniquely the role of physiology, my body, in how I feel.
Yes.
It's so weird. We think like we feel from our brain, mind. It's such a false notion. We actually feel all in our body.
Yes.
All in our body is where we feel.
In fact, our entire body is all the time sensing, reacting, assimilating. When we sleep and there's a mosquito, we automatically spot it, right? You're not awake.
Correct.
That's your body doing all of it.
So the takeaway that I had was, I noticed in this process when I was learning this technique that, we are not addicted to, let's say, a cigarette or an alcohol or to a drug. All of us, like I tell people that, like I think I'm someone who's with a non-addictive personality. Like people say that मैंने ये try कर लिया, डर लगता है मुझे, like मेरे को आदत लग जाएगी. कुछ लोग बोलते हैं मेरी addictive tendencies तो मुझे control करना पड़ता है. It was very hard for me to give up smoking. I don't start it. इस तरह के conversation मेरे लोगों से हुए हैं. So I always used to think कि मेरी non-addictive personality, because मुझे craving आता ही नहीं है. And then I went to Vipassana, and then I saw कि यार क्या deep rooted है यार craving and aversion constantly in my mind,
Right.
whether it be through the movement of my body or what I want to talk about, who I want to hang out with, and so on, at finest to very abstract levels.
Grossest. Yeah.
I saw this exhibition of this behavior, that I was addicted to feeling good all the time.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird thing to say, being addicted to feeling good. But that's what Vipassana highlighted to me.
Exactly.
It highlighted this addiction. I said, ठीक है, मतलब मैं drugs नहीं कर रहा, doesn't make me any better, because I'm still addicted. I'm
Right.
as addicted as that person.
Yes.
That person has probably gotten a substance to, put a veil on it. In my case, just because I don't have a substance that I can put in my hand, doesn't mean I'm not addicted.
Absolutely.
And from then onwards, I took it as a challenge that, can I maintain some degree of equanimity when I don't feel good? That is a test in
Right.
some ways, right? and I've actively tried to do that and with some success. And I feel like that this is one of the highest forms of knowledge we can have in that sense.
Absolutely. I mean, that is why, I mean, the real Vipassana is like preparation for the worst day of your life, right? I mean, that is when it will really help.
Correct.
So that is the true test. When there's a stop, I mean, when life is going good, everyone's happy, it's smooth sailing, right? But when you're tested, when there's a storm in your life, that is when
Which will eventually come.
which will always come.
Always and multiple times.
Yeah. By virtue of the way you are built, it will come, because life will not.
By virtue of how things are.
How things are, and also our nature of getting addicted to what we already have, so we want more than that. We can't go less than that. So by virtue of our dopamine cycle, we will have a bad day. Also coming
inbuilt.
Yes. And also to your previous point, I somehow think that, so you asked how I ended up going there, and you spoke about Mr. Harari. So actually, in some ways, maybe reading his books maybe influenced me in some ways. So we can't even tell how things influence us, honestly.
But let's put our best finger on.
Yeah, I mean, there are millions of influences all the time. You will never find out what really influenced you.
All those 10,000 reels of random guys and girls dancing have influenced me too.
Start this podcast.
To start this podcast somehow led to here.
Right.
कि ये नाच रहे हैं, मैं नहीं नाचूंगा, मैं कुछ और करूंगा.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe in some unconscious way, reading about, so he in his book also speaks about how the Buddha's insight about us being, addicted to our sensations and coming out of the cycle of suffering. Maybe those things, and how he actually had written, he had dedicated his second book to Mr. S.N. Goenka, who has started.
He did?
Yeah. So his entire first page is about, I couldn't have written this book without Vipassana, and this book is a dedication to Mr. S.N. Goenka. So I think some of those things, and also when I read about Buddha's insights in his section on sensations and all of that, somewhere I really felt that, this has some deep truth. Only at the intellectual level, but still.
Right.
And that probably egged me on that maybe I should try it. And of course, there are people around me who have tried it. So naturally, there are various influences, but
so you went there. You were motivated to go there because you read something which influenced you in a way that intellectually you were convinced that this is worth giving a shot.
Yeah.
This seems like
one part of it.
This seems like slightly different. Yeah, one part of it, of course, but it was probably more immediate and observation closer to the date.
Right.
That I now think this is a good thing to try, but your body and brain have been absorbing this content, prepping you for this moment.
Right.
So you did that. Those 10 days. A lot of people, my friends, they're a little worried. मैं तो चुप नहीं रह सकता, मैं एक जगह मतलब अलग नहीं रह सकता, किसी से बात भी नहीं कर पाएंगे. How did your first 10 days go?
I didn't really have a lot of those problems. It was tough. I wouldn't say it's
Definitely
easy.
not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Anyone who says that is lying.
Yeah, you should not delude yourself. I mean, one of the things is Vipassana also helps you rid yourself of these self-deceptions and delusions that we have.
Left by yourself.
Yeah. So hopefully, if you have done that, you will not say it was easy because you should not have that sense.
If it was too easy, then you should be preaching Yan already.
It won't be too easy for anyone because
No chance.
of the conditioning of our minds. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but I was, I think, really looking forward to it. And I think it was very beneficial, I would say. Every day was a mind blow for me. Like one day after the other, I was like, oh, shit. And I've heard this from some of my friends also.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
From third day onwards.
Yeah.
तब तक I had a lot of backache and I was like तकिया दे दो पीछे.
Yeah.
That's how my first 2-3 days started.
Your legs will ache.
Then I felt like I honestly felt like I was holding gold in my hands. It is radiating. That's how it felt. Ki this is so precious because this experience I couldn't have had anywhere else.
Yes.
I was convinced.
And psychologists say that some of your most profound experiences you will never be able to explain in words. So even this half an hour discussion may be insufficient. The only way to really explore it would be to go and sit.
And now you practice every day. You said 65 minutes in the morning and 25 minutes in the evening.
Approximately.
Right.
Yeah.
So 1.5 hours every day, you're practicing it continuously. So I'm guilty of not doing that. But tell me, how have things changed for you in your personal experience? Like, how is your day different? How is your mood different? How are you more creative because of it? I know you don't want to assign direct things to it, keeping that as a caveat. But would you want to credit it with some of the way Yuval Noah Harari credited Mr. S.N. Goenka for being this guru?
Absolutely. I mean, For a change, here you can directly attribute things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big thing about Vipassana. You can directly see the change. So they say the change is immediate, the change is tangible, the change is in this life, not in some other life.
Wow, yeah, I remember that.
And many people promise, do this and in afterlife you will get this, that. Nothing like that. So immediate tangible changes happen. If your mood is like this in life, it will probably be like this.
I can understand.
Despite there will be being a storm here, a big mess up here, a big screw up here, your mood will be stable. A lot of the cravings just disappear. In fact,
They disappear.
oh, I mean, that's
What
a
is
very
it?
strong word.
Yeah.
But you can very easily
You can
manage.
stand them when they come.
So, as an example, I mean, I used to love alcohol a lot. I quit it after that, and it's been almost 2 years since I quit alcohol, and it's going fine. I mean, I don't feel the need to.
Have your clients complained that your creativity has gone down in the last 2 years?
Since my team delivers, I don't directly deliver all of those assignments, and they.
Good. You're making sure they're drinking enough, right?
Yes,
Cool.
absolutely.
Fair enough. Yeah. Work first.
Yes, the creativity is alive. But it becomes much easier to manage your cravings, and it's not like people when they hear words like cravings, they feel very specific things like that chocolate cookie or that
This is not that
Budweiser.
way. Actually, this is the problem with
Words.
Not with words. That these words are without those context, because we've been in there. There was a proper structured delivery of knowledge
Correct.
that was happening.
Over
and
10
when we
days.
use craving and aversion here, the context is completely different. As soon as you point out like craving, सब लोग यही सोच रहे हैं कि हाँ मुझे नहीं आती इतनी, मेरे को चॉकलेट वॉकलेट खाने का शौक नहीं है, मैं तो सुट्टा भी नहीं पीता, तो मेरे लिए नहीं है शायद विपासना.
Right.
And I gave the exact opposite to that कि I was that guy. And I'm like, I am addicted for sure. And this became a mission in my life.
We all are addicted.
I can show you right now in my notes that where I wrote down, I am addicted. Do I want to be addicted? Right? No. What do I do to not be addicted? And then the importance of something like Vipassana, like shown up so well, because it's the only known, relatively certain path to rid yourself of some of this sensitivity to feeling good.
Yes, exactly.
Sensitivity.
Yeah, we are all addicted, and to transcend that, we either have to transcend our biology, which probably will be a project in the next few decades, or we have pathways like Vipassana, which is a lifelong pathway. You should not enter it thinking that I'll be enlightened tomorrow. That will probably, in all likelihood, not happen. But even taking a few steps in that direction will transform your life beyond measure. So apart from much lesser cravings and all, I think one of the big changes that has come is the increase in compassion.
Okay.
Yeah. So that I think is probably one of the.
How do you measure that, like in terms of how you felt or in terms of your actions?
Actions, because and of course how you feel with respect to other people.
Yeah.
So earlier, if I would see a person, let's say, screaming at someone else in the mall, I would think
judge them that he's a bad person.
Bad
kind of a
person.
thing, in short.
Yeah, what a bad guy. I would never do all of that. Who does he not have any manners? All of that. Today, probably you would feel compassion for him. Maybe he's suffering from something. Maybe he's ignorant. Maybe he had a bad day. Let me pass on some compassionate vibes to him and let him be happy. So that is the big change that happens. The bigger change that ideally should happen, that even if you have an enemy or someone who's hurt you, even then you should, instead of feeling hatred or anger.
And I think I get what you're saying. So it goes both ways. And is the change because you understand at an experiential level that intrinsically they're the same as you.
Yeah.
Their triggers and their responses may not be the exact same expressions that you imagine for yourself, but they're doing this because they're as addicted as you are to the idea of feeling good, and they never want to feel pain.
Absolutely.
And this is their way to react to it. But the underlying idea is, hey, don't make me feel terrible, because then I'm going to burst out.
Right. So the even deeper if you go, they are also animals, you are also an animal, and you both have the tendency to suffer.
Fair enough.
So suffering is universal. Once you understand or start understanding that everyone suffers, then compassion arises. It's an emergent property of this realization. You don't have to push yourself to be compassionate.
It's an emergent. Yeah, because I think a lot of people are like intellectualizing this, that compassion is so important. We must be compassionate. I'm like, yeah, but how? Like, practice these 3 things in the morning today. I'm like, I get it. I'll try that, but it doesn't change me inside. It doesn't sound like a valid promise even if it's effective to a certain degree, it seems something or it feels off.
Right.
That just by saying or doing or trying to believe that compassion is better, can I become compassionate? It's such an odd thing to do.
So on that point of compassion, I think that this course itself is the only thing that brings it out naturally. Like you were saying, to force yourself to be compassionate is very difficult. And I've actually had people come and tell me that I can't be compassionate. I don't get it naturally. And I say I completely get your point, because even for me, it was very difficult. But after you do these things, after you develop an experiential understanding,
Yeah.
it just comes about on its own.
No, I share this exact same experience. I keep saying this to people that, everywhere I look now, I see a lot of suffering. And this became more evident when I understood my own causes of suffering. That, to acknowledge one, I am suffering. These are some causes that I'm suffering. And then these causes are roughly shared between all of us. And that's why we are all suffering. We have a shared suffering in that sense, because we share the same species,
Right?
Right? And as soon as I had this realization more experientially, without this case,
Right.
not logically only, and because I was kind enough to take care of me, I felt that there is some degree of compassion that actually emerged. And
Yes.
I have actually become more empathetic, more compassionate towards other people, and more forgiving. Compassion
Exactly.
and forgiveness go hand in hand.
Yes.
Right? That's the compassion is how you feel. Forgiveness is what you offer. Something like that.
Right. And in fact, so many tangible benefits emerge that when you start becoming compassionate, you start giving more.
Yes.
You start forgiving more. You start helping people out in distress rather than maybe
Correct.
judging them.
Correct.
You start donating. You start caring about the
And
planet and
someone's
animals.
bad behavior doesn't shock you anymore. It worries you now.
Right.
That's
And your
what-
circle of concern expands.
Correct.
Expands way beyond your own selfish desires, and I think that's the biggest transformation it can.
No, I think, yeah, you've brought up, I think we've ended on the perfect note on why do Vipassana and what it leads to, and compassion and giving and forgiving. These are all tangible emotions. I think it's a reasonable thing to say that if you understand how your mind works, and that way you understand how humans work, there are a lot of fundamental changes and paradigm shifts that happen within you and how you see the world. So I want to conclude on this. We've spoken about a lot of these topics, whether it be from the point of view of the importance of history, right, to how to be uniquely creative and original, which is your core pursuit at Minimalist, and then finally ending with Vipassana, right? What is it and why is it so important? What difference does it make to our lives? Now at Coffee and Startups, I am more centric towards aspiration and early stage entrepreneurs. These are people who are either taking the plunge or have recently taken the plunge, and they are dealing with a lot of uncertainty and chaos inherent in this situation. Like, it's by design. You can't have order on day one. So when they're dealing with this, it's naturally a difficult thing,
Right.
and it's naturally a stressful thing. And it may not always be the cup of tea for everyone. So if you, from this discussion today, if you were to say that, specifically for creatives and entrepreneurs, what are the key takeaways that they can, try and think of applying in their lives, which will probably help them a lot the way they have helped you?
Right. So I definitely think from whatever we discussed, trying to learn Vipassana meditation and practicing it itself would be probably very beneficial for all people who are trying to start up, or all entrepreneurs or creative people, because as much as you're trying to manage uncertainty and other people and chaos, you first need to manage your own mind. And that's where it all begins. So if a really stable and equanimous mind will produce dramatically amazing results. So that could be one thing. And second is, I think even in business, we have to deal with people. And if we have to deal with people and get the best out of them, we really need to understand how people function. So psychology, history, anthropology, these all help you really understand where have
and
we
even
come
biology
from.
for that matter.
All of it. I mean,
it's so weird because biology assumes the study of organs. Maybe we're breaking a human down, but no, it's more pervasive than that.
These are just 3-4 things. I said there's a vast array of things.
Yeah.
If you read, if you do interdisciplinary reading, if you read as widely as possible, it can give you insights into how life works, how people work, how communities and tribes work, and help you a lot in business as well.
Wow. No, I think these are very valid takeaways. I can imagine that all of these are actually somehow feel intangible in some ways. But when you think of in terms of having your understanding about people, about the world, as a key tool in your arsenal for building better businesses and living a better life, having a worthwhile life experience as a more broad bucket or umbrella of things, I think these can actually be applied and made good use of. So
there's a very nice quote that I remember from an author who's a math professor, and typically we all ask, why should I really study calculus or differential calculus or anything like that, right? So the answer is that, I mean, he gave such a beautiful answer.
Okay.
He said that when you go to the gym and you do deadlift and squats, you don't do it so that someday there'll be a situation where you're required to deadlift on the road, right? You do it because someday there'll be a situation where you have to push or pull or lift a weight and run. That is why you train in the gym. So similarly, there won't be a situation in life where you have to do calculus, but it builds the mental muscle, just like working out actually builds the physical muscle. So reading, meditation, all of these are just doing that for you, your life, your mind.
Don't take this point seriously because he was terrible at math back then. And I'm sure you don't want to show your scorecard at it. I was a 4-pointer in math. So मुझे समझ नहीं आया इसने क्या बोला है. But I think the analogy is fair. Maths teachers are typically not the best at analogies. I think that's where they struggle most. So you've taken that away. You found one good math professor for a change. So with this, I think I want to wind up our today's conversation. I think we've been wanting to do this for a while. So first of all, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you're the first person when I'm moving to a fancier setup. We've got better lights. We've got a better human around. So my friend Sarika is sitting here. It's her house. Ye sofa wofa mera nahi hai. There are the cool things around that you see. Even the books, they are all like hers. Except this one.
No, including this one.
And Sahil is just paying me $10,000 for promoting this book. So we've got, I'm so excited about, kicking this new journey ahead for coffee and startups also with this. I was telling you, you're the first guy who was there on water pitch, right? As a genie. And by the way, if you guys check that out, because Sahil is wearing dark goggles in the middle of a day, like sitting in his room on Zoom. He was wearing goggles. God knows he's a little crazy, but
only because of you.
So you came there, and then you're here today. It's such a nice coincidence because I think I'm getting this opportunity to get back in touch, and we've spent enough time on the stage or in the rehearsal rooms jamming for our songs. Right, we've done two. Right. One was in cover from Opeth, and one was in original. Right.
Yeah.
So he's a fantastic drummer, and I'm a mediocre singer. So we did still fine. And after that, we sometimes crossed paths at the gym. Maybe worked out a couple of times together. Always thought we would work out a bit more, but he was always the more consistent one. So I've been a bit more envious.
This is a paid promotion.
No. These are things I really mean. Iska to $10,000 mil raha, so that makes sense.
I thought it was 5,000.
Cool. Okay. Fine. Tax bach gaya thoda. So and from those times, I think I'm so glad that we're coming back on another common topic of interest here, which is we are inherently extremely curious and exploratory beings, right? And this is a trait we share, and this was an opportunity for us to share that together with the world. So thank you so much again for coming in, and I hope that Minimalist has this grand vision coming true very soon. Would you mind stating the vision again?
Yeah, our vision is that we want to be India's most inventive company in the creative company. Yeah.
That's a fancy vision. I wish I could say I have a fancier vision than that, but this is great. For a creative company to come out of India and say this out is in itself a big deal, because India is not seen as the hub or the place for creative outcomes, and you're changing that paradigm. So this is brilliant. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. It was
Thank you not just for coming here, but being this person who's changing this scene in the creative industry.
Thank you.
So this was amazing. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching Coffee and Startups. And we're going to be doing more of these cooler series. I may not have this beautiful backdrop all the time because this is not my home, but I will try my best to keep making amazing podcasts like these. And I need your feedback on what you think went well, what didn't. Who would you like me to bring on board and talk to? So share all those ideas, comments, feedbacks. I'm always there. So thank you so much again. I'm on a mission to empower the early stage and aspirational entrepreneurs to make a dent in their world, and this is a small way to do that. And the grand ways are coming soon. So I'm very excited about that. You can see that like in some of the things that I'm doing these days. So I hope you guys stick around, and I'll see you again later. Bye.